Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to another Brawl Stars video, and today we're going to be talking about the best possible brawlers to use in the new game mode, Hot Zone. So we're going to be doing a bit of a tier list here, and I know I already made a video sort of on strategies to use in this game mode. Make sure you go check that out if you want to know how to actually win with the brawlers that I'm going to talk about in this video. But now that it's been out for a couple days, we have stats about use rates, win rates, star power use rates, all those sorts of things, and I've combined it from a bunch of different sources, all the different maps that have been out so far, to give you guys a tier list of the best brawlers to use for your current situation in Brawl Stars. So let's get right into it. So I'm going to work my way from the bottom to the top, and now all of the brawlers I'm going to talk about are usable and you should use. It gets better as we go along in the video, but I'm not going to talk about the ones that you shouldn't use because it would be a waste of time to talk about them. So just by process of elimination, if I don't talk about them in this video, don't use them in Hot Zone. But I am going to focus on the ones that you should be focusing on and why they're just so good in this mode. So let's start with the brawlers that you don't have star powers on. So these will be good in Hot Zone even if you don't have the star powers to boost them in any way. So first off is going to be Jessie. She is very good with her turret super. You can just plop it down in one of the zones and it will just add an extra bit of damage that really helps you if you're in a 1v1 or even a 1v2 situation. Just that extra damage is almost like another person is there with you dealing damage to your opponent. So it really gives you the edge in that sense, and especially in the maps with only one zone, the opponent's team is going to be often grouped up together if they all try to stay inside the zone. So that chain effect on her attack is going to be super useful in that situation, and that's why she is super good in this mode. And we also have Penny for pretty similar reasons. Her turret is really good at just dealing that area damage to really push people out of the zone or force them to get out of cover and just get some extra damage along the way. Her main attack also can hit multiple people at once with that follow through damage after hitting your first target, so she's really good even if your opponent is grouped up. She's also really good with that extra turret damage if it's on a 1v1, so Penny is also a very good choice. The next is Sandy. He is super broken for Hot Zone because of his attack that you can basically just spam auto aim and deal a good bit of damage in 1v1s, but then of course his super is amazingly powerful because you can just throw it down right on top of the zone, whether it's one zone or two zones, and your opponent has basically lost all consistent damage because they're just shooting randomly at that point, and that gives you a huge advantage for that time when that sandstorm is up and you can regain control of the hot zones, and that just gives you a huge advantage over the course of the game. You can really use it to pull off some comebacks by retaking control even if your opponents have been doing really well. So Sandy is a very good person to include on your team. He just has very good main attack and a very good super. Next up on the list, even better, is Nita, and she is super good because once again she shares a common theme with other brawlers on this list in that she can throw something down for her super that essentially adds another player onto your team. So with one zone you're essentially making it a 4v3 now, which can give you that extra edge you need to take control of the center. When there's two hot zones it becomes even easier because you can turn a 1v1 into a 2v1 or just help your teammates out on the other zone. It's just super helpful to have that bear in your back pocket whenever you need to. And Nita's also pretty good at dealing damage in 1v1s, so she can hold her own while still helping out her team. So that's why she comes in this high on the list. And coming in first for the brawlers that are great even without star powers is going to actually be Mr. P, the brand new brawler. Surprising that he's coming out this strong, even though his attack doesn't deal too much damage. It's just super useful to have in Hot Zone because it has an insane amount of range. It can hit over walls, so you can stand behind cover, and in Hot Zone the maps, a lot of them have one tile walls, so your attack is going to easily be able to jump over those. So you're essentially the same function of a thrower, except you can deal more damage, and the super is a spawner, which is super helpful to just pester your opponents, prevent them from healing, and forcing them to push back outside of the zone. Mr. P has an insane win rate on nearly every map in Hot Zone from all the sources I checked. So even though I don't have it myself, I can pretty safely say that Mr. P comes out at the top of this list for the best brawlers on Hot Zone without star powers. Now moving on to some honorable mentions for this part of the list, Ems is definitely also a very good brawler that you might want to consider running. That splash damage that she has from her main attack can rack up some huge damage pretty quick, and her super is just good for preventing people from getting away. I'd say she's a bit better in the ones with only one hot zone, just because everyone's going to be more clumped together, so she's going to be able to do a lot more damage that way, but she is definitely also a good pick, although some of the other brawlers I mentioned might be a bit better. And Rosa and El Primo also are pretty good to include on a team just to round it out. It's always nice to have a tank on your team to sort of tank all those hits and force your opponents to push back because they can't take you out. And Rosa and El Primo also deal a good bit of damage if you get close to your opponent, so they sort of serve the same purpose in that sense. El Primo can jump back and forth between the zones with his super if you are on a map with 2 zones, so that's also super nice. Even though they might not be the absolute best when taking a look at them individually, they are still super good to include on a team for Hot Zone, so definitely don't count them out. And now we're going to move on to the best brawlers to use with star powers. So if you do have the specific star powers I'm going to mention for each of these brawlers, make sure to use them on Hot Zone because they are going to be super broken. So first let's talk about Pam, and typically Pam is not seen as a pretty strong brawler in most modes except for maybe like Gem Grab or something like that, but in this mode she is super good because of her star power Mama Squeeze. So you can just throw down the healing turret on either one of the hot zones and you're dealing 500 damage per second, which is kind of insane because that's almost the same as like Nita's Bear or something. It has a huge radius and it also heals you at the same time, so it can give you a huge advantage on whichever zone you're trying to fight for. So that's why once you get this star power, Pam becomes super good in Hot Zone and definitely a good option if you do have it. Now, Rosa is also really good with her star power. She's pretty good without her star power, but with the Thorny Gloves star power, she gets that extra damage boost when she has her super activated, and this is just so good for counter pushes and trying to regain control. She can go in solo, activate her super, deal extra damage, take almost no damage with that shield, and she can easily win out 1v2s, maybe even 1v3s if everyone else has low health. So this is very good for taking back control of the game, and if you have that star power, definitely recommend using Rosa. Next up is Poco. Personally, I'm not very good with Poco, so I guess I don't really see the appeal of him, but I know with his Da Capo star power, it's super good because he can heal people with his normal attack, which is an insane amount of value to provide, especially in a game where staying alive is so important. He has put up some really good win rates, so I guess I have to trust that and say that this star power is just super good in supporting your team and keeping them alive when they're trying to make the most crucial pushes in the game, and so it's very good to help take back control. His main attack just covers so much area, so it can hit the entire opposing team all at once if you aim it right. So I guess that's why Poco's good. But now let's move on to Penny. She was good without her star power, but with her star power, she becomes even more busted. And I'm talking about the Balls of Fire star power, where her cannon shots leave that burning radius for a couple seconds after they hit the ground. And that is just so good for this area control because it blocks off huge sections of the hot zone where your opponent won't be able to walk without taking damage. So it really forces them for a long period of time to either get out of the hot zone or take damage, which is always a huge advantage, and it really keeps your opponent on their toes and makes it a lot harder for them to keep control of the hot zones for a longer period of time. And then of course, whenever Penny is good on a map, so is Jessie, and especially with her Shocky star power. That essentially gives her that chain boost, that chain attack, similar to her main attack, but on her super. And that's super good when a lot of people are trying to get clumped up into one spot and claim those hot zones, because it will just deal so much damage to both of them. I think it's pretty self-explanatory why that is super good in this mode, so definitely run Jessie whether or not you have her star power. And then we've got another repeated result here with Nita, and of course her Hyper Bear. So this just basically takes the advantage of her bear, the fact that you can essentially split yourself into 2 attackers, both dealing a lot of damage, and it just makes that even better because now your bear is dealing damage more than twice as fast as before. So that's just super helpful at getting that extra damage. Very, very good option for Hot Zone. And then finally, even with a star power, Mr. P still seems to come out on top with his win rates on all of these maps. Now, I personally don't have him, haven't really looked at his star powers too much, but I would assume they don't really affect the gameplay all that much, because if you increase that health on the spawning turret, I guess it's okay if your opponents are trying to target it, or you could use it as a sort of shield in front of you to soak damage, but I feel like it's going to be in the back of the map most of the time, and your opponents aren't going to be targeting it that much, so it won't have too much effect. And then of course, the other star power that lets your suitcase jump even if you don't hit anyone. I feel like that could be pretty good. However, when everyone is going to be in such close proximity for most of these modes, I really don't think it's going to come in handy that much. So I would say, even though I haven't used them yet, I would go with the one that increases the health to the turret, only because that could come in handy in a lot more situations. But either way, regardless of whether or not he has the star power, he still seems to be winning a lot of these games. So Mr. P is definitely a very good option to run. Oh, personally, I will always stand by Bo. He is my favorite brawler to play by far. And with his star power, Snare a Bear, it is super useful for similar reasons as other spawning brawlers, because you can assist the other hot zone in modes with 2 hot zones. And stalling out your opponents is just so useful. Once they get stunned, you essentially get a free kill on them. So I find Bo to also be really good. He seems to have a pretty decent win rate, not quite as good as the other brawlers I've been talking about in this video, so that's why I didn't place him on this list, but just thought I would throw in a little plug for my boy Bo there. But that's gonna be it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like and a comment down below if you found this video extremely helpful, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more strategies and helpful content like this. But that's all for today, guys. So see you later.